It was just another day at Utah Valley University, until everything changed. Charlie Kirk, one of America's most controversial young leaders, was gone in an instant. Tyler Robinson was accused, but new footage raises shocking questions. Did he really do it? Or is someone else behind the tragedy? Frame by frame, the story that the nation believed is falling apart. Secrets, lies, and unanswered questions. This isn't just a crime, it's a puzzle that could shake the country. Stay with us, because what you're about to see will change everything you thought you knew. Music. Charlie, I really think you might have a real shot at the presidency one day. What once seemed straightforward, blaming Tyler Robinson for the Utah incident, scrutinizing his controversial political views, past actions, and support for former President Trump, has now become a tangled and contradictory story. The newly released video challenges everything the public thought they knew, showing, frame by frame, that Robinson never carried out the alleged act. If that's true, the pressing question remains, if not Robinson, then who? On September 10, 2025, Charlie Kirk, the outspoken conservative and founder of Turning Point USA known for stirring debate, spoke before hundreds at Utah Valley University, a campus typically considered progressive. As expected, the audience was sharply divided, half cheering and applauding him, the other half waiting to challenge his every word. Sitting beneath a tree with a microphone in hand, Kirk gestured confidently as the discussion began, setting the stage for an intense and provocative exchange that would captivate and divide the crowd. Music. Phones were out, cameras rolling, as supporters hoped to see their hero shine and opponents prepared to challenge him. Then, at approximately 12:23 p.m., an unexpected sound rippled across the square. Panic erupted, students screamed, some froze in place, while security rushed in, clearing the way for medical teams. Charlie Kirk was immediately taken to the hospital in critical condition, and an hour later, the unthinkable was confirmed. He was gone, leaving a nation stunned, grieving, and filled with questions. In the chaotic first moments, rumors raced faster than facts. Some claimed the perpetrator had been in the crowd. Others insisted the sound originated from the Hall of Flags, the glass-enclosed corridor overlooking the square. A witness pointed to the roof, prompting a UVU security officer to investigate, where traces were found of someone positioned with a clear view of the stage. Investigators later confirmed the roof as the suspect's hiding place. That night, the nation grappled with grief and debate. Former President Donald Trump spoke solemnly, framing Kirk's death not only as the loss of a person but of a young leader silenced mid-journey for daring to speak his mind, delivering a message that was as much a warning as it was a lament. The following morning, campus security footage was released, showing a grainy image of a man in dark clothing, sunglasses, and a baseball cap moving across the roof just minutes before the incident, images that immediately ignited controversy and suspicion nationwide. Though his face was obscured, the footage circulated widely on news outlets. Among those watching was Tyler Robinson's mother in southern Utah, whose heart sank at the sight. The figure on the roof bore an uncanny resemblance to her son. She called him immediately, and Robinson insisted he had been home, feeling unwell, far from Utah Valley University. Yet unease lingered. When she showed the images to her husband, he too admitted the resemblance was striking. From that moment, the story grew increasingly complex. Prosecutors later reported that Robinson's family, fearing he was in emotional turmoil, tried to coax him into coming forward, describing him as stressed, confused, and sometimes speaking in ways that alarmed them. In their panic, they reached out to a trusted family friend and former sheriff's deputy, who persuaded Robinson to cooperate with authorities, ending a night of mounting tension and suspicion. On September 11th, Tyler Robinson and his parents went to the Washington County Sheriff's Office to comply with the investigation, and the following day, Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray held a press conference to formally announce the charges. The murder of Charlie Kirk had now become a case that gripped the nation, full of grief, shock, and unanswered questions. The murder of Charlie Kirk was being framed as an American tragedy, senseless, needless, and devastating for everyone who loved him. Early reports painted Tyler Robinson as a dangerous perpetrator rather than a troubled young man, and the evidence initially appeared damning. Police reported finding a rifle near campus, wrapped in a towel, with one spent bullet and 3 remaining rounds, and claimed traces of Robinson's DNA were on the weapon, the towel, and even the bullet casings, which bore strange inscriptions thought to be political symbols. Yet the release of new surveillance footage complicated the narrative. While the prosecution argued Robinson was on the roof at the exact moment of the incident, the video's frames before and after raised doubts. The body type, posture, gait, and movements of the person in the footage didn't perfectly match Robinson. Crucially, the video never captured the decisive moment of the alleged act. It only showed someone crawling into position and leaving immediately after the noise, without depicting any specific action, calling into question the cornerstone of the case. Public perception had been led to believe the footage proved guilt, but a frame-by-frame analysis revealed otherwise. Even Robinson's alleged confessional text to his roommates added confusion, claiming he left evidence in the bushes, whereas police said it was found carefully wrapped in a forest. The discrepancy left the nation questioning if the truth was ever as straightforward as it first seemed. Robinson admitted to thinking about and preparing for the act for more than a week, yet digital forensics uncovered no concrete evidence that he ever actually did. The pressing question remains, were these confessions genuine, or simply the ramblings of a young man under intense psychological pressure, perhaps even being coerced into taking responsibility for something he didn't commit? While these doubts linger, political figures quickly seize the story to push their own narratives. Former President Donald Trump and his allies suggested that ideological opponents might be behind the incident, deepening an already tangled controversy. Critics, however, point out there is no evidence linking Kirk's death to Antifa or any left-leaning group, arguing that some politicians have used the tragedy to justify crackdowns on opposition. Meanwhile, concerns grow that Tyler Robinson may never have committed the crime at all. His DNA on the evidence could have come from his own family, and his so-called confessions may reflect emotional confusion rather than guilt. Even the surveillance video, considered the strongest piece of evidence, fails to capture the decisive moment. The question persists, if Robinson isn't shown committing the act, then who truly was responsible, and why does the government appear so eager to close the case despite lingering uncertainty? Charlie Kirk was far more than a conservative commentator. By the time of his death, he had become one of the most influential and polarizing voices in America's culture wars, having built a massive media platform through Turning Point USA, the organization he founded at just 18, aimed at shaping the next generation of political thought. Charlie Kirk had become a figure who transformed college campuses into arenas for heated debates about identity, politics, and free speech. To his supporters, he was a courageous voice willing to challenge mainstream narratives, while critics saw him as a provocateur who sparked more conflict than dialogue. This dual identity, hero to some, divisive figure to others, was fully on display at Utah Valley University that fateful day, as Kirk fielded questions on topics like violence, immigration, and gender. When the incident occurred, admirers viewed it as an attack on free speech, whereas opponents interpreted it as a tragic outcome of radicalized rhetoric. Even after his death, Kirk's ideas continued to resonate in courtrooms and political discourse. Former President Donald Trump quickly framed the incident as a testament to Kirk's influence and the threat he posed to ideological opponents, recalling, "Charlie, I think you could be president one day," underscoring Kirk's potential as a future leader. The case itself took on political significance, elevated from a personal crime to a symbol of ideological conflict. Prosecutors emphasized this angle, with Utah District Attorney Jeff Gray stating at the press conference announcing the indictment, "The state is further alleging aggravating factors on counts 1 and 2 because the defendant is believed to have targeted Charlie Kirk based on Charlie Kirk's political expression." The indictment against 22-year-old Tyler Robinson included multiple charges: aggravated assault, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and committing a crime in the presence of children, each count carrying the weight of both legal and political ramifications. The charges against Tyler Robinson were presented as evidence not only of reckless behavior but of deliberate intent, with prosecutors announcing their plan to seek the maximum penalty under the law, a decision Attorney Jeff Gray emphasized was rooted entirely in the evidence. Yet the political undertones of the case cannot be ignored. To grasp why this incident has become so sensitive, one must understand Charlie Kirk, the man, the movement, and the controversy he embodied. As the founder of Turning Point USA at just 18, Kirk had built the organization into a powerful symbol of young conservatism, inspiring supporters while making an equal number of political adversaries. Regardless of whether Robinson actually carried out the act, prosecutors framed the case around one idea: Kirk died because of what he believed and because of what he dared to say. His ideals and influence transformed a criminal trial into a politically charged symbol. TPUSA's mission was clear: to promote conservative values, engage young people, and challenge what Kirk saw as liberal overreach in higher education. Rapid expansion saw the organization grow chapters nationwide, gain support from major donors, and forge connections with prominent Republican figures. Kirk's talent extended beyond organization. He was a masterful orator, commanding attention during tense campus Q&A sessions on topics such as gun control, immigration, and LGBTQ+ rights. His answers were crafted to go viral, often sparking intense debate and controversy, further cementing his position as a polarizing yet influential figure in America's cultural and political landscape. Charlie Kirk's debating style was both his greatest strength and his most controversial trait. To supporters, he was a young man of remarkable confidence and tenacity, standing his ground even in challenging environments, never dodging questions, and holding firm against opposition. To critics, however, that same determination turned discussions into confrontations, transforming what could have been scholarly exchanges into ideological battles. This blend of staunch conservatism and fierce progressive backlash made Kirk a central figure in America's culture wars, a man admired, contested, and never ignored. In prosecutors' eyes, that prominence made him a potential target for someone like Tyler Robinson. When Robinson voluntarily turned himself in, he was portrayed as Kirk's ideological opposite, a young progressive and LGBTQ+ advocate who had frequently criticized conservative voices and allegedly harbored resentment toward Kirk's beliefs. His parents' accounts reinforced this narrative, recalling heated arguments between Robinson and his father over politics and his criticism of a Kirk-organized UVU event as pointless and divisive. Prosecutors framed these tensions as evidence of motive, suggesting a chain of emotions that culminated in extreme action. The indictment against Robinson encompassed a range of charges. Count 1, serious conduct resulting in the loss of life. Count 2, creating high danger in a public area. Counts 3 and 4, obstructing the investigation by concealing or erasing evidence. Counts 5 and 6, influencing witnesses to delete messages or remain silent. And Count 7, influencing minors present at the scene. Together, these charges painted a portrait of deliberate, calculated action with far-reaching consequences. The indictment painted Tyler Robinson as more than just a suspect. It portrayed him as an individual capable of manipulation, concealment, and exerting control over those around him, creating a dramatic legal narrative where truth and motive remained elusive. Perhaps most controversially, prosecutors claimed the case was politically motivated, suggesting that Charlie Kirk was not killed by chance but targeted because of the beliefs he publicly advocated. For conservatives, this framing resonated. Kirk had long been a polarizing figure whose words inspired both fervent support and intense anger, facing criticism, threats, and media attacks that made him a potential target of ideological violence. For progressives, however, the interpretation was far murkier. Some commentators argued that the prosecution was inflating the political stakes for partisan purposes, particularly given how former President Trump and his allies quickly seized on the tragedy to attack dissenters. Critics warned that factions on all sides were rewriting the story, shifting narratives, and assigning blame, turning the tragedy into a tool for propaganda, even as there was no evidence linking Antifa or any left-wing group to the incident. In today's highly charged political climate, reckless reporting only fueled the cycle of conflict. The debate over motive became as intense as the controversies that had surrounded Kirk himself. Was Robinson truly driven by radical beliefs, or was the incident exploited to elevate Kirk's image as a conservative martyr? Whatever the truth, Robinson's fate was being shaped not only in the courtroom but also in the court of public opinion, where every piece of evidence, testimony, and detail would be scrutinized, debated, and politicized. In the case file, every detail was being scrutinized through a political lens, with the smallest inconsistencies dissected for signs of bias or manipulation. Amid this maelstrom, Charlie Kirk's presence loomed large. His controversial speeches, defiant tweets, and heated confrontations were treated as part of a character profile, as if the man himself were on trial alongside the evidence. When prosecutors announced their intent to seek the maximum sentence, the message extended beyond justice for a tragic event. It was framed as a symbolic statement that Kirk's death was not merely a personal loss but an attack on free speech, a cornerstone of American democracy. Yet cracks in the evidence, from surveillance footage that never shows the decisive moment, to DNA that could be explained by ownership, to text messages contradicting the official timeline, blurred this seemingly clear picture. Still, prosecutors portrayed Tyler Robinson as both a perpetrator and an ideological adversary. Kirk's death, they argued, could never be viewed as routine. It carried political overtones because he himself was influential, controversial, and unafraid of confrontation. Robinson, before being labeled mastermind, was a 22-year-old navigating life, described by friends as intelligent but reserved. His parents noted he had become quieter in the year leading up to the incident, embroiled in political arguments with his father and a relationship the family struggled to accept. These personal details were later used by prosecutors to craft a narrative of a young man ensnared in progressive ideals, painting a portrait far more calculated and dangerous than the individual his family knew. Tyler Robinson's story, prosecutors argued, was shaped by political frustration and personal conflict that contributed to his instability. His mother recounted how he became increasingly supportive of LGBTQ+ rights and critical of figures like Charlie Kirk, whom he believed sowed division, while his father recalled heated debates in which Tyler dismissed Kirk's events as pointless theater. What might have been ordinary generational differences was reframed as evidence of something darker. When Robinson was arrested, even personal details such as his relationship with a transgender roommate, irrelevant to the case, were made public and used to reinforce a narrative of a young man at odds with both his family and Kirk's ideology. In reality, Robinson was simply a young adult grappling with identity and personal values, yet the events surrounding Charlie Kirk transformed that journey into a portrait of a potentially innocent man cast as a criminal. To understand why prosecutors tied Robinson's life to Kirk's death, one must first understand Kirk himself, from a suburban teen in a middle-class Chicago neighborhood to a controversial conservative icon. The youngest of 3 children, Kirk never stood out in school or sports, but his leadership skills and political passion drove him to challenge what he saw as liberal bias in education. In 2012, at just 18, he founded Turning Point USA in a small garage with a few donations, and his charisma quickly drew conservative donors and media attention. Within years, TFUSA had become a national movement with hundreds of campus chapters, dedicated to countering ideological bias and empowering young conservative voices. Kirk became a frequent Fox News presence, a PAC speaker, and a symbol of a new generation of conservatives thriving in the social media age. His viral debates on college campuses, often confronting liberal students directly, cemented his reputation as a fearless and bold figure unafraid of confrontation. Charlie Kirk was a figure who could be seen as either a skilled debater or, depending on perspective, a provocative agitator. Early in his career, he stirred controversy with hardline stances on immigration, emphasizing border security and criticizing open border policies. He opposed affirmative action in education, arguing it created new inequities, and expressed skepticism toward climate change, calling concerns over it exaggerated. Yet his most sensitive positions centered on gender and LGBTQ+ issues. As a conservative Christian, he opposed transgender athletes competing in women's sports and denounced what he called radical gender ideology. These statements drew widespread protests, but also solidified his image as someone willing to speak truths others avoided. Supporters admired his directness, while detractors branded him an opportunistic agitator exploiting societal divisions. His alliance with Donald Trump further amplified his influence. Kirk became a vocal defender of Trump, linking the MAGA movement to a younger generation, while Trump lauded him as a rising star and even suggested he could one day become president. This elevated Kirk to a symbol of a new conservative generation, both a Trump disciple and a potential future leader. For Tyler Robinson, however, Kirk embodied everything he opposed. Investigators noted that Robinson's animosity was deeply personal. His parents recalled frequent, heated debates in which he accused Kirk of spreading hate, and his opposition became a defining part of his mindset leading up to the tragic events. As Tyler Robinson became increasingly involved with progressive movements, particularly in support of LGBTQ+ rights, his views starkly contrasted with the conservative message Charlie Kirk championed. Trump's 2016 victory and the rise of the movement, Kirk quickly emerged as the youthful face of the new conservative wave. Leveraging social media, powerful rhetoric, and unwavering support for Trump, Kirk positioned himself as a leading voice for the next generation of conservatives. Trump himself praised him, saying, "He's a great young man with an incredible future." Some people say he could be president one day, recognizing Kirk's influence in reaching younger voters who were traditionally outside the MAGA base. Kirk transformed Turning Point USA into an almost de facto youth wing of the movement, organizing conventions filled with American flags, patriotic slogans, and anti-establishment messages, all echoing Trump's political style and priorities of freedom, faith, and conservative identity. While supporters celebrated this alignment, critics argued TFUSA had become a political tool for Trump, noting its funding mirrored that of the former president's major donors. Kirk, however, embraced the connection, repeatedly calling Trump the greatest president of his lifetime, defending him in controversies, and tying America's future to his leadership. This relationship amplified both his influence and the controversy surrounding him. Whenever Kirk echoed Trump's positions on immigration, gender, or election integrity, he drew both rapturous praise and vehement criticism. With his campus speeches frequently sparking loud, sometimes chaotic protests, images of students arguing or clashing with his supporters becoming commonplace in media coverage. Images and videos from Charlie Kirk's campus appearances quickly spread online, cementing his reputation as both a challenger and a target of attack. His public approach mirrored Trump's style, unyielding, unapologetic, and turning controversy into a tool to amplify influence. Kirk viewed public outrage not as a setback, but as a catalyst to expand his message. When the Utah Valley incident occurred, the connection between Kirk, Trump, and the MAGA movement became inseparable. In his remarks, Trump expressed both grief and political significance, telling Kirk, "Charlie, I think you have a good shot someday at being president," signaling that Kirk was more than an individual. He had become a symbol for the next generation of the MAGA movement. For Trump and his allies, the narrative was clear. Kirk's death was an attack on free speech and the spirit of MAGA itself. His image appeared at rallies, circulated in fundraising campaigns, and his legacy became both a tribute and a tool for political mobilization. Critics, however, argue the tragedy was being exploited, with personal grief transformed into propaganda, and public emotion used to consolidate power and deepen divisions. They pointed out the immediate rush to blame Antifa, despite the lack of credible evidence, emphasizing that Antifa is not a structured organization and that no documentation links Kirk's case to any left-wing group. Analysts warned that the focus had shifted from uncovering truth to weaponizing the tragedy for political purposes, further fueling national debate and controversy. Critics argue that tying Charlie Kirk's story to the image of a MAGA martyr demonstrates how deeply politics has infiltrated public discourse, transforming personal tragedy into a tool for propaganda. Yet, regardless of whether one sees it as exploitation or commemoration, the impact is undeniable. Kirk's death has forever linked his name to Donald Trump, elevating him from a young conservative activist to an icon and symbol for the movement he championed. The story of Charlie Kirk and Tyler Robinson extends beyond politics. It serves as a cautionary tale about how society communicates with and educates its youth. When dialogue is replaced by anger, and differences of opinion escalate into hostility, society loses its capacity to listen, understand, and reason. In an era where social media magnifies every argument, fostering education, critical thinking, tolerance, and empathy has never been more vital. Schools are not only centers for knowledge but spaces where young people must learn to disagree respectfully, engage in discussion without belittling others, and approach ideas with curiosity rather than judgment. Preventing similar tragedies begins with teaching the next generation to question rather than condemn, to listen rather than merely react, cultivating not only knowledgeable citizens but humane individuals who love, think, and pursue truth thoughtfully and responsibly.